My husband cheated on me with my best friend, and now they want me to bake them a cake. 5 years ago, I married someone who I loved with all my heart. We met in college, and right after we graduated, we got married. I decided to stay home because my husband made a lot of money. I gave him everything. I supported his business, cooked for him, cleaned for him. I basically babied him, but was happy to do so because I loved him. I thought if I was a good wife and nurtured him, he would love me back. For 5 years, it was good. Until I discovered he was cheating on me when I found a random receipt from a hotel. I investigated a little and found out he was in fact cheating on me, and with my best friend Kylie. I was betrayed by 2 of my closest people. Kylie gave me a vague excuse that she didn't want to hurt me, but she just fell in love with him. My husband's excuse was, "You don't make me feel special anymore. You're boring to me, and you let yourself go." I agree, I was a little chubby back then because of my medicines, but I wasn't obese or anything. Also, I was always too tired from doing everything around the house to even bother trying to work out. I tried the path of reconciliation but failed, and he left me for Kylie. It really brought me back to reality. I suddenly realized I was surrounded by toxic people, and cut many of them off. After all was said and done, I only had 2 people I could truly confide in. Their names were Josh and Marie. I was really devastated. I felt like without him, I was nobody. I lost my husband, my best friend, my house, my life. I had to stay with Marie for a while after, and she eventually offered me a small job in her catering business. I loved food. When I was married, I would try and make something new and special every night. Cooking was always very therapeutic to me. During that time, Marie's mom gave me some useful advice. The average human lives for 75 years. You're 27. Are you really that stupid that you're going to waste the rest of your life being sad over a man who never loved you? Her words really stuck with me. I felt a lot better about myself going forward. My husband's infidelity left me with some serious trust issues, so I didn't bother dating for a long time. I decided it would be best just to focus on myself. I socialized with a lot of people while I was catering and made a lot of connections. Since I was younger, it had always been a dream of mine to own a business. Since I loved creating food, my friend gave me the idea to start a baking business. Marie was a saint, and helped me get my business off the ground. Within a couple years, I had built up a successful business. It was small, but it had very loyal customers. I started feeling more like myself, knowing that I was working under my own terms. It was liberating. I hadn't realized how much extra free time I now had, since I didn't have to care for a large human anymore. My house was clean. No one was putting dirty laundry on the floor. No one was telling me to make something else because they weren't in the mood for a certain dish. Nobody put dirty dishes in the sink. I started to embrace this solidarity. I know it doesn't seem like much, but it was a relief. Moreover, no one questions me whenever I go out. I don't have to answer anyone before going out. I could spontaneously go on a long drive, and not have to ask for permission. I learned a new language in my free time. I focused more on the family and friends that genuinely loved me. I was doing so much better. Getting dumped made me see a lot of the red flags I missed in my marriages. I used that as a lesson to steer clear of any trash men in my life, and tried dating for a while. I met a wonderful man named David. He was everything I wanted in a boyfriend, and 3 months in we had already begun talking about getting engaged. I now see my divorce not as a curse, but rather a blessing. Recently, I got a call from Kylie saying that she regretted marrying my ex. I was honestly shocked. She said he never appreciates her and always puts the burden of everything on her. They have 2 kids now, and my ex refuses to help with any of the chores. All the while I'm thinking, why the hell should I care? She's always tired and exhausted after taking care of 2 kids and an adult all day. I was just glad I didn't have to deal with that crap anymore. I simply told her, "You said you loved him, so it isn't really my problem, is it? What's the point of coming to me now?" She started telling me she was sorry, and wished she hadn't done what she did. She then dropped a bombshell on me. She mentioned that her son was having a birthday, and wanted me to be the person to make her cake. At first, I told her no, but then she said it would be a huge order. I asked how huge, and she said there were going to be at least 250 people to feed. Now I don't know about you, but I have never heard of a birthday party this large before. I was stunned when she told me the number, and asked if she was serious. She confirmed, and I asked her to give me some time to think about it. While I really don't want to have any more contact with this woman, I also know that I could be exposing my bakery to hundreds of people by taking this order. It feels wrong that I want to help out the people who ruined my life years ago, but at the same time, money is money. Maybe it was the businesswoman inside me talking, but I accepted the offer, under the condition that she would have someone talk for her. I had no interest in speaking with this woman any more than I had to. A couple days later, I got a message from someone who said they were going to be the middleman for the transaction. He sent me the full list of items, and boy, was it long. In total, they wanted 6 large vanilla cakes, 1 extra large gluten-free chocolate cake, 4 large regular chocolate cakes, a huge order of my specialty donuts, and an ungodly amount of assorted cupcakes. All in all, it came to about 50 pounds of food, and they wanted it ready within a week. When I saw the list, I went a little pale. At this point, I had David, Josh, and Marietta help me. I only had a few employees in my store, and one of them was a part-timer. I resorted to asking around on Facebook, and eventually gathered a mixed team of volunteers and paid employees, who would only be helping with this single order. Like I said, I had amassed a loyal following at my store. We lived in a small town, so the majority of the town knew of the birthday, and many people wanted to help me for the experience, or just for the fun of it. My ex happened to be head of one of the largest corporations in town, so everybody knew him as well. This was why there were so many people showing up. Well, the day of the birthday came, and we delivered. We had to rent out a truck just to port all of the food. When we got there was already a table set at the venue. David knew about my ex, and came with me to be there if anything happened, and to keep me far from either of those two frauds. As I was busy setting things up, my ex came up to me to say hi. I'm not gonna lie, seeing him after so many years just made my heart drop. This man has given me the worst pain you could possibly give to a human. I am glad I was able to keep my composure. I said hello back, and he tried starting small talk. He said he was sorry about how things went down, and that I looked better than the last time we had seen each other. I honestly felt disgusted talking to him. Then, he dropped a nuke on me. He said that for all these years, he hasn't stopped thinking about me. I was silent. I couldn't say a word. He kept saying that he missed me and my cooking. How my homemade French onion soup was still his favorite. I didn't know what to say. At that moment David noticed that my ex was making me uncomfortable, and he rushed towards me with a fake emergency. He asked if I was okay. I said yes. I walked away without saying goodbye. After the table setting was done, I was about to leave. That's when I saw my ex's father, along with other guests. He noticed me, and quickly came to give me a hug. He was always a very humble man, and was one of the only people who supported me during the divorce with his son. He looked really happy to see me, and asked me how I was. I talked to him about my business and he gave me some great business advice, which I still use frequently today. He even talked to my boyfriend. They got along very well. I told him that we had more deliveries to do that day, and that we had to go. However, he insisted that I stay until lunch was served. I tried respectfully declining his offer, but he was persistent and I caved. It was only another hour or so I wasn't too worried. I did notice my ex eyeing me the whole time, but I was fine since I had David there with me. I chatted with some guests, and they told me they would definitely recommend my services to other people. I didn't even stay for the cake cutting. I started feeling overwhelmed. I saw some of my old friends, and my in-laws. My ex-mother-in-law avoided me, and some of my old friends only mustered a hello. We went back to the store, and I thought it would be finished. Well, it wasn't. I got another text from Kylie. I'd already blocked her on her main phone, so she was now texting me from a friend's number. She said she and the guests really liked my cakes and desserts, and also tried apologizing again. I don't know how much clearer I could have made it that I didn't want to talk to this woman. I told her I had no interest in being friends, and unless it was to order another cake, not to contact me ever again. I haven't heard from her again after that, but her 5-year-old daughter is having a birthday soon, so I'm guessing this isn't the end of it. There is a silver lining though. My services aren't exactly what you might call cheap. For 11 cakes, 250 donuts, and 250 cupcakes, their bill came to roughly $5,000. Luckily, they didn't scam me, and I was paid the next day. I was able to buy some new equipment for my store, and the order brought in a bunch of new customers. Fast forward to the present. We've now expanded into 5 new locations in 3 different cities. As for Kylie and my ex, they broke up many years ago after my ex cheated again. They split custody of the kids, and are living separately. I still keep in contact with my ex's father, and a few years back sent him a couple $1,000s as a thank you for his advice. Life is good. What was the craziest thing you bought in a pawn shop? As soon as I saw it I was pissed off. It ended up tearing apart my family. Years ago, a buddy and I were walking around town and just hanging out when we came across a pawn shop that looked as if it hadn't been cleaned since the 60s. We decided to take a look around and see if they had anything interesting. The first thing I noticed was that they had some firearms for sale, and decided to see if they had a decent 12 gauge for a reasonable price. I had just turned 18 a month ago, and wanted to get one for myself. I was perusing their very limited selection and didn't see any that fit my criteria, but did notice they had some surplus rifles. It was then I saw something that made my blood boil. Let me set the stage so you can envision what I saw. The floor was covered in a mint green tile that looked as if it had been original to the shop. The walls were painted a very dingy off-white with noticeable yellow streaks from years of people smoking in the shop. Their firearms were at the back of the store. There was an L-shaped glass display case that held small firearms and knives. On top of the corner there was a spinning rack of long firearms. Behind the counter was a vertical wall rack of even more long firearms. On one side, there was a display wall of different firearms. Now that you have that image burned into your mind, I'll continue. On the display wall, there were various surplus weapons, and one caught my eye. It seemed familiar, but I couldn't place where I had seen it. I asked the guy behind the counter if I could look at that weapon, and he said sure. He proceeded to tell me how he came by it. The previous owner had sold it a couple of months ago saying he needed the money for his car or something. As soon as I held that weapon, I knew exactly where I had seen it before. It was my great-grandfather's 1903 Springfield .22 trainer that he had taught me how to shoot with. How did I know it was his? On the stock, there was some damage that I was responsible for, and with my pap's permission, had carved my initials into the side. Needless to say, I bought the rifle and took it home. When I got back, I called my great-grandfather straight away, and asked him if he still had that old .22 from when I was a kid. He said it should be in his safe, and that I was welcome to come shoot it any time I wanted. I told him I would be there on Saturday, and would have a surprise for him. On that Saturday, my Uncle Jared met me at the door. Uncle Jared was the screw-up of my dad's brothers, and he still lived with my grandpa. He was a compulsive liar, and everyone knew he was taking advantage of my grandfather. He said that Pap was in a bad mood and that today wasn't a good day. I asked why, and he said that Pap had found out that his old .22 was missing. I told my uncle that I knew it was missing and that it had been missing for a few months. I asked him to have Pap meet me on the back porch as I had a surprise for him. Pap came outside and apologized for wasting my time and that he would find that rifle if it was the last thing he did. He asked what my surprise was and I showed him his .22 rifle. I quickly explained that I had found it in a pawn shop and bought it. Pap was usually a very quiet person, but that day, he went after my uncle, kicked him out of the house, and threatened to put him in the ground if he ever touched his firearms again. Once Pap calmed down, he asked me how much I had paid for it. I told him not much. I knew he was trying to get the amount from me so he could give me my money back. Every so often he would ask me what I had paid for that rifle and my response was always not much. In his will, he stated that the 1903 may not have cost much, but it's yours along with all my firearms. I still have that old .22 and it will be in the family for a long time. Men, what's the most down bad you've ever been? I couldn't bear to look at her after, and comprehend what I had just done. Thank God for my neighbor Terry. I started talking to this girl one night after she messaged me through social media. We began talking about common interests with subtle flirting here and there. The following day, I asked her to send a photo of herself. She proceeded to send 4 pictures, 2 of which she was in baggy clothing, the other 2 being top angles. All of these photos had 2 things in common. All had filters and all hid what everything below her neck looked like. After talking for a little while, our conversation shifted to a more intimate context. She told me about some of her fantasies, such as getting tied down and tickled. I refused to follow through with that one, but told her I'd fulfill some of her other ones. We made a plan for her to sneak over while my parents were out of my house the next day. Well, the next day rolls around and we talk about her coming over, which she later does. After waiting an hour for her bus to get to my house, I waited outside so she knew which house was mine. My neighbor Terry was outside, doing some yard work. He asked me what I was doing and I explained. He just nodded in male understanding. We've all been there. As she walked to my driveway, I noticed something about her. Not only was she hiding her body, but she was also very unattractive in person. Maybe a solid 2 out of 10, and that was generous. She smelled like a mix of body odor and cigarettes. Me, not wanting to be rude as she had just traveled across town to do the devil's tango, walked her into my house, into my room. We put on a show on Netflix and began following through with what we had previously talked about, excluding the tickling. After finishing up what was and will be my worst intimate experience ever, we both just sat there. The post-act clarity was crazy. I actually went into my bathroom, and took a long and hard look at myself in the mirror. I'm pretty sure I even remember a tear dripping down my eye. I came back out and sat down. She immediately went in for a kiss. I was horrified. She was making herself at home, and it was becoming more and more clear that she intended to spend the night. I don't think I could bear her presence for that long, to stare my shame in the face. I sat there thinking about how I could get her out of my house without being rude. I finished a glass of water and said I was going to go fill it. I quickly went out to my window, and Terry was trimming some bushes. I started whisper yelling, trying to get Terry's attention. I finally got him to come over. I explained, dude, the chick I had over seems like she wants to stay the night. I don't think I can handle that. Can you do me a huge favor and knock on my door to get me out of this? Terry didn't look surprised in the slightest. I've got you, brother. As soon as I saw her I was anticipating this possibility. I'll be right over. I went back to my room, and then there was a knock at the door. I opened the door, and there was Terry. Hey man, we've got a brother in need. Everybody's meeting up. I was confused, as I had no idea what he was talking about. Thankfully, so was the woman I had just done the deed with, and she asked what in the world we were talking about. Oh, Josh didn't tell you? We're both part of a former alcoholic support group. One of our members just compromised his sobriety, and so it's all hands on deck to support them right now. I just played along and told the girl that I was sorry but I needed to be there for my brother, and she left without much resistance. After she left, I thanked Terry and went to go wallow in my shame and contemplate my existence, but he stopped me. Josh, are you sure you're feeling okay about what just happened? I can see the regret and shame on your face. I just shook my head. Do you want to have a few beers and talk about it? I nodded. For the next 2 hours, Terry helped guide me through the grieving process. By the end, he was able to show me that it wasn't productive to be miserable about our mistakes, but instead to move forwards and better ourselves in the future. As a child, what did your parents say that will stick with you forever? My father gave me this advice shortly after I got married to the love of my life. He knew a thing or two about lifelong love. When my mother passed away, they had just celebrated their 63rd anniversary. I was working long hours, and feeling put upon when I would come home to my wife needing help with the housework and the baby. She didn't come right out and accuse me of slacking, but I felt the suspicions. I was lamenting to my dad that I just wanted a 50-50 split, thinking, in my naivete, that would be an equal solution. He nodded, and in his own no-nonsense way, gave me the sagest piece of life's wisdom. There is no such thing as a 50-50 split. Things will always be unequal between partners. Some days you will be called on to give more because your wife needs more help, but the scales always tip back and next week you may need her support. At times, you may be called on to give 100%, or you may need her complete support because you have nothing left to give. Here's the important part: if you are not willing to accept this temporarily unequal state of affairs, then you shouldn't be married. If you don't love your wife enough to put her happiness and well-being above your own, then you don't deserve it when she does that for you. My dad's been gone for 7 years now, but by following his advice, my wife and I have been married for 44 years. We now have 3 sons, and 3 grandchildren. As we've aged, my dad's advice has been even more pertinent. In the past year, we each had to undergo heart surgery. I had a quadruple bypass, necessitating a lengthy stay in bed. My wife was a trooper. She did everything for me until I could get up and move around on my own. Then, 7 months later, she had a pacemaker implanted, and I got to return the favor. Things like this happened throughout the entirety of our marriage, and it made me really happy. Whenever I felt down, or upset at my wife, I would always think back to my father's words, and they always made me feel better. In every case, the one being cared for felt worse about needing so much help than imposed upon to help the other. And that's what a marriage should be. Thank you, Dad, for the great advice. I miss you more every day.